It's Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance at our state capitol in Sacramento. Glad to have Matt Cate back. He is the executive director of the California State Association of Counties, known as CSAC. And I want to speak with you, sir, about transportation. We've been speaking about the challenges California faces. Just state roads alone, $59 billion in back repairs. Locals say they need $79 billion. And then recently, I understand that your organization, others talked about nearly $750 million hit because of the drop in gas tax. And then the BOE recently readjusted the gas tax and it dropped. Right. And that may cause a greater hit in terms of transportation funding. Is it that serious, sir, the funding situation? It is. It's getting pretty dire. Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been talking about fix the roads we have. That's been our focus. You know, we really need to make a dent in, you know, right now our California roads are graded about a D. Right. So, you know, 60% out of a scale of 100, really poor. And so we've been focused on, well, what would it take to fill the potholes, to make sure the bridges are safe, those kinds of things. Well, and then what's happened recently is the California Transportation Commission has said, well, without funding, we need to actually cut projects that are to expand as well. And so we kind of feel like it's been a 1-2 punch on transportation in California lately.
Yeah, I understand that in LA County, as an example, because of that $754 million drop, they had to cut funding for new light rail, a pedestrian bridge around the Burbank Metro Link, widening of the 138 in the Antelope Valley. So that's just one county as one example. So the question becomes, from where do we get additional funding? We, I guess, are still in special session on transportation. Not much happened last summer when we were in special session. I wanted to ask you, if I may, about cap and trade, because I was speaking with BOE member Senator George Runner recently about cap and trade, and we know that I think it's 25 or maybe 33% of cap and trade goes to high-speed rail. I think some of it goes to affordable housing. Could some of that money go to transportation, or is it all taken?
I think it could. Now, you have to be careful. The law says that to use cap and trade funding, there has to be a link to reduction of greenhouse gases, right? So if you can't show the link, then you can't use the money. And so to get, you know, new pavement on existing roads, you could argue, right, that cars would run a little more efficiently on new pavement, so maybe there's a link there. I think the stronger argument is let's use cap and trade dollars to deal with transit, to deal with the bike lanes, to deal with the costs associated with all those components, and that might free up money, right, that's in the broader transportation bucket, to spend on the kind of meat and potatoes of filling potholes and making sure roads and bridges are safe.
So who decides how the cap and trade money is divided? Is that a legislative matter? Is that a regulatory matter, or an executive branch matter?
It's a regulatory matter. So in this case, the Air Resources Board decides. Now the legislature could step in and say, you know, we mandate that the following things happen.
I think that's what happened with high-speed rail.
Right.
That's part of a budget negotiation.
Exactly. And so we know that, you know, a quarter is going over to high-speed rail. So, you know, any of those things kind of could happen. We've been talking to the board about local, about local projects that we think both would reduce GHGs and might have the benefit of improving roads, transit, those kinds of things.
What about speaking with the legislature about trying to get a portion mandated as a matter of legislation in terms of transportation funding, however you might describe it?
Well, we're open, and we have had those conversations, and some legislators are amenable to stepping in. You know, here's the problem, is that for a number of legislators, really they're fine with transit and bike lanes and infrastructure around big cities, but they don't want to necessarily spend a lot of money on county roads. They don't want to necessarily spend a lot of money in places where they're hoping to reduce sprawl, right? So it's a tough sell to get cap and trade dollars to be set aside for something like roads.
Let's talk more broadly then about the gas tax, because I believe it's indisputable that the gas tax has not increased since 1994. I don't think that is in dispute. And when you consider inflation, when you consider more fuel-efficient vehicles, when you consider more public transit, the state is simply taking in less money for the gas tax.
Right.
And so there's a lot of discussion. Should we increase the gas tax? Should we place a fee on vehicles that don't use that much gas because they're electric or hybrid? Where do you go with this, sir?
Well, the polling we've done shows that Californians recognize they need to pay for their roads.
Right.
Nobody wants to.
Right.
You know, everybody wants free roads and free ice cream on Saturday.
Of course they do.
Of course. But in the most palatable approach seems to be a little bit across a broad spectrum. So it's true, electric vehicles pay nothing for the roads that they're on.
Right.
So yeah, they should chip in some. And it's true the gas tax has stayed the same since the 90s and is now worth far less in terms of its buying power.
What about those that say, but we're still at the 5th highest gas tax? I mean, that's a persuasive argument.
Yeah, sure. But the thing is, everything's more expensive in California, right? We pay a little more in wages. We are, we're more environmentally conscious.
Right.
There's just all the normal things that make things expensive here, make it expensive to build and repair roads here as well.
I want to ask about another discussed solution, and that's known as the VMT, vehicle miles traveled. The Department of Transportation has a pilot program right now. They're seeking 5,000 volunteers that would allow their, is it odometer, to be monitored, so there's a sense as to how far they're driving. They wouldn't be taxed, but it's just a way to collect data as a potential taxing scheme. What do you think about this VMT solution?
There's some positive points to it. It seems to be equitable, right? So it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive. If the more you use the roads, the more you would be taxed.
But could you argue that, look, some folks, they want to have a bigger home, they want to live in suburbia, they can't afford a home in downtown, whatever downtown may mean, and so they're being penalized because they have to drive farther because they can't afford a home in the let's say, city center.
Sure. Well, and we worry about, agriculture is a $2 trillion industry.
And they're driving everywhere.
They're driving everywhere.
Right.
And
but the flip side, I'll speak against myself, they're using the roads more.
Right.
Life's not always fair.
Correct. And so no matter what you do,
right.
the truth is the roads are in terrible condition. I was talking to someone the other day who hit a pothole so big on the Richmond Bridge that it destroyed the tire. CHP had to push him off of the off-ramp there. And the truth is we're all paying about $750 a year in additional repair fees that we wouldn't be paying, which is way cheaper than if we just addressed the revenue issues.
Sir, is there any will to really address this issue? I feel as if, I would hate this to be like, I don't know, CEQA reform, where we're talking about it for years and years and years and nothing gets done.
Right. Well, everybody wants to do something about it. The difficulty is they have way different visions, right? So some folks are focused on new revenue, and others on, gee, we got to use the revenue we have more efficiently. Let's cut Caltrans. Let's reform CEQA. Let's take some steps to make these dollars grow. And frankly, counties who are by their nature pragmatic people said, God, let's do both. Let's do both. Whatever it takes. And the governor has said that too, to his credit.
So are we hopeful 2016 is the year where we'll see some solution?
Well, the governor has indicated that he is going to make a big push.
Okay.
And so we will see but it's an election year. Right, and
Could cut either way.
Those votes are very tough to come by in an election.
His name is Matt Cate. He is the executive director of the California State Association of Counties, CSAC. I'm Brad Pomerance in Sacramento. This is Local Edition. Great job.
Thanks.